Let's see, Senator Marshall.
Well, thank you, Chairman, and welcome again to our guests. I wanted to start just for a second and maybe correct some of the testimony or some of the thoughts from my colleagues across the aisle and talk about some of the great things HHS has actually done. They've established their MAHA program to address the chronic epidemic that this nation faces. 60% of Americans have a chronic disease. We're spending 90% of our healthcare dollars fighting those diseases. They've banned many of the artificial dyes. They've enforced executive orders on healthcare transparency and prior authorization issues, both of which need to be codified by Congress. I welcome their research on autism. They've banned irreversible surgical mutilation, which is basically sterilization of children. Their Operation Stork Speed has enhanced infant formula safeties, and that's just the start. I want to quote Secretary Kennedy. This is from an April 6, 2025 social media post. The most effective way to prevent the spread of measles is the MMR vaccine. That's not me saying this. This is Secretary of HHS, Secretary Kennedy. The most effective way to prevent the spread of measles is the MMR vaccine. Let's start with Dr. Adams. Dr. Adams, in your role at ACF, just paint the picture for us. What are you excited about? What can you move the needle on in your area?
Yeah, Senator Marshall, past this prologue, where I intend to spend a disproportionate time of my energy and a disproportionate amount of my effort is improving child welfare, specifically the foster care and adoption systems. Beyond that, the other largest programs at ACF, TANF, working to ensure it is a hand up and it helps on a path of self-sustainability, early childhood education, as I said, promoting and strengthening Head Start, as well as the Child Care Block Grant, making sure it works for parents and for families are going to be areas that I intend to spend my time and energy on.
So how do you do that? How do you move the needle? What did you do in the past that moved the needle to make that happen?
Focus on data, as I showed with Senator Grassley and Hassan. If you walk into any of our offices across the state, you'll see what our ratio of foster homes to children is. So having a compelling scoreboard, measuring it, pushing it out, aligning incentives within the agency, I think are things that are really important.
Okay. Mr. McKernan, let's go to you next, if you don't mind. You've talked about the moral imperative of economic growth. In your view, what are the most promising Treasury tools to spur sustainable growth for the future? What's at your disposal to help grow this economy?
Yes, Senator, thank you for the question. Within my domain and domestic finance, I think the single most important thing we can do to drive growth is to revisit the financial regulatory system to ensure it's actually well-tailored to the goals we're trying to achieve with financial regulation, safety and soundness, financial stability. I think more concretely what that really means is we need to ensure that our requirements reflect the latest and greatest understanding of the actual risks that we're regulating. So for community banks, I think we need to revisit the tailoring of our regulatory framework coming out of the financial crisis, ensure that it really is fit for purpose, right? That it reflects the unique lower risk profiles of community banks. We need to revisit, like I discussed with Senator Lankford, our deposit insurance regime and make sure that it also has a level playing field for community banks. And then we need to extend those same kind of principles to the capital markets, to the housing finance markets. Again, the guiding principle here is modernizing regulatory requirements so that they're aligned with risk. This is not about weakening requirements. It's about ensuring that we have a system that achieves safety and soundness, mitigates risk to financial stability, protects consumers, and does that efficiently and fairly.
Okay. Why don't you take that just a little bit drill down a little bit further, what that looks like? How would you implement that? If you're a community banker and I'm talking to my folks, friends back home, what would you say to expect then out of the administration to make that happen?
Sure, Senator. So I would commend Acting Chairman Hill at the FDIC for just putting out recently a proposal that would index some of these dollar thresholds that trigger heightened supervision. Many of those were set years, if not decades ago, and have not been indexed to inflation. His proposal would achieve that index. I think that's a great concrete step in the right direction. Similarly, we should revisit the deposit insurance framework. Okay. I think that's one thing we should modernize. And then what I hear from community banks is that much of the burden is on the consumer compliance side and the anti-money laundering side. I think, especially on AML, anti-money laundering, there's a real opportunity there to ensure that the regulatory scheme is truly aligned with the national security priorities, that banks can allocate risk from lower risk activities to higher risk activities. Believe it or not, this was actually a controversial statement in the last administration. Some of this is just basic common sense, but I think if we execute and implement on it, it'll really drive the ability of banks to do what they're supposed to do, which is lend to their communities.
Thanks. We ran out of time, but I also take a look at it seems like there's just one regulatory group after another in the banks asking the same questions, and it's just taking away time away from other good opportunities in the banks. Thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.